I still remember the day everything changed in our house. It wasn't when my mother passed away, though that certainly marked the beginning of one chapter closing. It wasn't even when my father met Sarah at that grief counseling group 2 years later. No, the real change came when I was 11 years old, standing in our kitchen that had suddenly become too small for 8 people, watching Sarah hand out color-coded schedules like we were employees at her personal corporation, rather than children trying to figure out how to be a family. You know how some memories stick with you not because they're particularly dramatic, but because they capture the exact moment you realize something was fundamentally wrong. That was mine. Sarah stood there with her laminating machine. Yes, she actually owned a laminating machine, creating these elaborate weekly schedules where Monday was blue for Marcus's activities, Tuesday was green for Madison's dance, Wednesday was purple for Tyler's tutoring, Thursday was red for my sister Grace's violin, Friday was yellow for my soccer, and Saturday was orange for my little brother Ben's art class. Sundays, she declared, with this bright smile that never quite reached her eyes, were for mandatory family time. I was only 9 when Mum died. Cancer took her slowly, then all at once, the way these things seem to happen. Those 2 years with just Dad, Grace and Ben felt quiet but real. We ate cereal for dinner sometimes. We watched movies in our pajamas on school nights. Dad would forget to sign permission slips and then have to drive them to school the next morning. It wasn't perfect, but it was authentic. We were figuring it out together, the 4 of us, stumbling through grief but holding each other up. Then Dad met Sarah at grief counseling. He'd finally started going after his brother, practically dragged him there. Sarah was there because her husband had left her, though she phrased it differently. According to her, she'd consciously uncoupled from a man who couldn't appreciate her vision for family life. I learned later what that really meant. He'd gotten tired of being directed like an actor in her personal movie. Sarah moved in with her 3 kids 6 months after they started dating. Marcus was my age, Madison was 13, and little Tyler was 7. Suddenly, our 4-bedroom house designed for a family of 5 was bursting with 8 people. The bathroom schedule alone required military precision. 23 photo frames appeared on our mantel where 3 used to be. Sarah called it blending our beautiful histories. I called it erasure, though I didn't have that word yet. By the time I turned 12, I'd started noticing the silence between us kids. It wasn't the comfortable quiet of people who knew each other well. It was the careful, calculated silence of people trying not to disturb a delicate balance. Grace would suddenly need to use the bathroom whenever Madison entered the kitchen. Marcus's smile would freeze into this mask-like thing whenever I spoke. During those mandatory Sunday dinners, we moved around each other like dancers who'd rehearsed our routine, never sitting adjacent if we could help it, never reaching for the same dish, never making direct eye contact for more than a second. Sarah would sit at the head of the table, because of course she'd claimed Mum's old spot, and beam at us. She'd make comments about having the most organized children in the world, how other mothers were jealous of our harmony. We'd all laugh at her observations, but it sounded hollow, like the echo in an empty house. Sometimes I'd catch Ben, only 8 years old, staring at his plate with this 1,000-yard stare that no child should have. The house itself became a battlefield disguised as a home. I mapped out the invisible war zones like a careful cartographer. The basement recreation room where Marcus would accidentally delete my saved games every single week, always with this apologetic shrug that fooled exactly no one. The kitchen island where Madison would spread her homework precisely where Grace liked to eat breakfast, forcing my sister to eat standing at the counter. The bathroom cabinet where someone, and we all knew it was Madison, kept moving our toiletries to the guest bathroom, as if we were visitors in our own home. The real education came from Grace. My sister was 15 then, old enough to see the patterns I was just beginning to notice. She'd pull me aside after dinner and point things out with the analytical mind she'd inherited from Mom. "Notice how Marcus is suddenly allergic to our laundry detergent," she'd say. or how Madison gets migraines every single time we want to watch one of Mum's favorite movies. It was like she was teaching me to see the matrix of our manufactured family. Every headache, every allergy, every scheduling conflict was actually a tiny act of warfare, so subtle that adults never noticed. Sarah certainly didn't. She was too busy posting on social media about her blessed blended family to see that her children were slowly poisoning our existence with 1,000 tiny cuts. The 6 of us had created an elaborate system of avoiding each other while maintaining Sarah's fantasy of harmony. It was exhausting. Every interaction required calculation. Could I get to the kitchen for a snack without running into Madison? Would Marcus be using the computer when I needed to do homework? How long could I stay in my room before Sarah noticed and gave another speech about family togetherness? I remember Sarah's 40th birthday party like it was yesterday. She insisted we all contribute to the celebration, turning her birthday into another mandatory bonding exercise. The kitchen became a battlefield disguised as birthday preparation. Grace used the last of the vanilla extract that Madison needed for her cupcakes. Marcus hid the good mixer when he saw me looking for it, pretending he didn't know where it was. Ben accidentally knocked over Tyler's decorating supplies, though knowing my little brother, it might not have been entirely accidental. By evening, we had 6 separate desserts, each more passive-aggressively presented than the last. Madison's cupcakes were deliberately placed to block the view of Grace's cake. Marcus's cookies were burnt around the edges because I'd forgotten to tell him the timer went off. My brownies were cut into tiny, mean little squares. Even little Tyler had made these sad, lopsided Rice Krispie treats that looked like they were crying. Sarah was thrilled. "My babies all wanted to make me something special," she gushed, taking photos from every angle. She posted them online with captions about being blessed with 6 thoughtful children who each wanted to contribute. The comments poured in from her friends about what a wonderful mother she must be to inspire such devotion. If only they could have seen our faces behind her back, the eye rolls and grimaces we shared in a rare moment of unity. The breaking point, the moment everything changed, happened when I was 15. It started innocently enough. I needed to print an essay for English class, and my printer was out of ink. Marcus's door was open, and I could see his laptop on his desk. I knocked, got no answer, and figured he wouldn't mind if I borrowed it for 5 minutes. That's when I saw it. A Discord server called Surviving Sarah. My hands shook as I clicked on it. All 6 kids were members, even Tyler, who was only 10. The messages went back 3 years, starting right after Sarah's first family bonding camping trip, where she made us share tents according to her ideas about cross-family bonding. Marcus had to share with Ben. I was stuck with Tyler. Grace and Madison were forced together in what became the longest weekend of their lives. The chat was brutal in its honesty. There were channels for everything. Bathroom schedules updated in real time so we could avoid each other. Warnings about Sarah's moods, tracked with the kind of detail scientists use for weather patterns. Countdown timers to the end of forced family activities. Tips for looking happy in photos while dying inside. Strategies for avoiding each other without Sarah noticing. The channel that made my hands shake was called Exit Strategies. Marcus was counting days until college, had already started looking at schools as far away as possible. Madison had mapped out which relatives would take her for summers, complete with spreadsheets of who lived where and how to approach them. Grace was researching early graduation, calculating exactly how many credits she needed to finish high school a year early. Ben had boarding school brochures hidden under his bed, which broke my heart because he was only 11. Even Tyler, still in elementary school, had asked about sleepaway camps that ran year-round. But the worst channel, the one that made me sink into Marcus's desk chair, was Things We Can't Say. The messages there were raw, unfiltered. Grace had posted about hearing Sarah humming in our mum's kitchen, using her recipes, standing in her spot, and how it made her want to scream until her throat bled. Ben admitted he sometimes forgot Mum's voice and hated Sarah's laugh for filling the silence where Mum should be. Marcus had written a message at 2 in the morning that made my chest tight. I know it's not your fault your mum died, but I hate you all for existing in my house. I hate that my mum thinks your grief matters more than my anger. I hate that I have to pretend you're my siblings when you're just strangers who stole half my life. Madison's messages were even worse. She detailed how she'd mark her territory in small ways, moving our things, claiming spaces, anything to feel like she still had control over something. She admitted to faking migraines to get out of family activities and allergies to avoid using our things. She'd created an elaborate system of small rebellions that I'd always attributed to teenage nastiness, but were actually calculated survival tactics. That night at dinner, I watched us perform our usual symphony of false smiles and calculated kindness with new eyes. Now I knew we were all in on it, all playing our parts in Sarah's elaborate production. She told her favourite story about how blessed she was to have found love again, how her book club friends were jealous of her harmonious household, how other blended families struggled. But we'd found the secret. Grace gripped her fork so tight her knuckles went white. Marcus stared at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Madison's eye twitched every time Sarah said family, which was approximately every third word. Ben was already perfecting the 1,000-yard stare that would carry him through these dinners. Tyler had developed this thing where he could smile with his mouth while his eyes stayed completely dead. I realized then that Sarah had built her dream life on the backs of 6 kids who'd given up their authentic selves to maintain her delusion. She genuinely believed we were siblings who'd chosen this bond, that love had conquered all obstacles. She had no idea she was the only thing keeping 6 traumatized children trapped in the same house, performing happiness while we counted days like prisoners marking time on cell walls. 2 weeks later, Sarah announced she was writing a book about our journey. Blending with Love, How We Created the Perfect Modern Family, she said, showing us the mock-up cover featuring a staged photo from last Christmas where we all wore matching sweaters and smiled like hostages. She wanted to help other families achieve what we had. She'd already gotten interest from a publisher and a small advance. The Discord server exploded. The messages came so fast the app crashed twice. "She's monetizing our misery," Madison wrote. "Making money off our fake smiles," Marcus added. Even Tyler managed to type, "This is not okay," in all caps, which was the most emotion I'd ever seen from him. Sarah started preparing for the book immediately. Every moment became a potential chapter. She carried a notebook everywhere, jotting down observations about our beautiful blended life. She scheduled photo shoots with a professional photographer. She started a blog to build her platform, each post more delusional than the last. The cookbook incident happened during one of these staged moments. Sarah decided to include a chapter on family recipes, how we'd combined traditions from both families to create new ones. She planned this elaborate photo shoot of all the kids cooking together, wearing matching aprons she'd had made with Sarah's blended bunch embroidered on them. I walked into the kitchen to find her directing everyone like a film director. Tyler was positioned stirring something on the stove, even though it wasn't turned on. Grace was pretending to measure flour she'd already measured 3 times. Marcus and Madison were fake laughing at something while supposedly decorating cookies. Ben was sitting at the table with a mixing bowl, looking miserable. That's when I saw what bowl he was holding. Mum's vintage mixing bowl, the one with the tiny chip from when I was 5, and tried to help by carrying it to the sink. The one she used for her famous chocolate chip cookies every Christmas. The one that still, if you looked closely, had a tiny stain from the red food colouring we used for my 7th birthday cake. Sarah was talking to the photographer about lighting when she noticed me frozen in the doorway. "Oh, perfect, Lily's here. Sweetie, grab an apron and hop in next to Tyler. We're doing the new traditions from old favourites shots." She walked over to Ben, adjusting his position, and said the words that broke something inside me. "Hold up that beautiful mixing bowl, baby. We're showing how some kitchen treasures get passed down through our blended family. This will be perfect for the chapter on honoring the past while building the future. The words ripped out of me before I could stop them. That's not yours! Everyone froze. The photographer, who'd been adjusting his lens, slowly lowered his camera. Sarah's smile flickered like a light with bad wiring. What did you say, sweetheart? That's not yours, I repeated, louder this time. That's my mum's bowl. You can't use it for your fake family cookbook. The silence was deafening. Sarah's smile hardened into something that made my stomach drop. It wasn't the practice smile she used for photos or the fake one she wore during family time. This was something else, something that reminded me of a predator deciding whether to strike. Tyler, she said, her voice dropping to that dangerous quiet tone that made all 6 kids hold their breath. Put the bowl down carefully. Tyler set it on the counter like it was made of explosives. The photographer raised his camera again, whether from instinct or morbid curiosity, I couldn't tell. The sound of the shutter clicking seemed to echo in the silent kitchen. Dad appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes, coffee mug in hand. What's going on? I could hear voices from the garage. I couldn't stop myself. The words tumbled out, years of suppressed frustration breaking through the dam of forced politeness. I pointed at the bowl, my voice shaking but determined. She's using Mum's mixing bowl for her fake cookbook. The one Mum used every Christmas, the one she let me lick cookie dough from when I was little. She's taking everything that was ours and pretending it's hers, just like she took Mum's place at the table and Mum's spot in the kitchen and, that's enough, Sarah's voice cut through my rant like ice. But I was done being silenced. No, it's not enough. Nothing's ever enough for you. We smile in your pictures, we follow your schedules, we pretend to be a family, but you want more. You always want more. Now you want to sell our misery as some success story, and you're using my dead mother's things as props. Grace stepped forward then, placing her hand on my shoulder. Lily, she whispered, but there was support in her grip, a squeeze that told me she understood, that she had my back. Across the kitchen, I saw Marcus pull out his phone. At the time, I thought he was just texting, but later I learned he was live streaming the whole confrontation to the Discord server. Madison had her phone out too, slightly raised, and I realized she was recording. Even Tyler and Ben were bearing witness in their own ways, their young faces showing a mixture of fear and something that looked like hope. Sarah's mask slipped completely then. The photographer was still clicking away, capturing every second as her carefully constructed image crumbled. Her hands shook as she dismissed him with brittle cheerfulness that fooled no one. Just a family moment, she trilled. Teenagers, you know how they are. We can reschedule the shoot for another day. The photographer packed up quickly, clearly uncomfortable. As he left, I heard him mutter something about keeping the deposit, which would later become important when Sarah tried to claim the confrontation never happened. Dad set down his coffee mug with a deliberate slowness that meant he was trying to control his temper. Someone explain what's happening here, now. Sarah recovered quickly, a skill she'd perfected over years of managing her narrative. She launched into a speech about hormones and grief, about totally normal resistance to change in blended families. Her voice dripped with false understanding as she painted me as a troubled teenager acting out, still struggling with her mother's death 6 years later. I understand Lily's attachment to her mother's things, she said, touching Dad's arm in that way she did when she wanted him on her side. It's completely natural, but we're a family now, and families share. I thought using the bowl would be a beautiful way to honor her memory while creating new traditions. I tried to protest, to explain that sharing meant asking first, that honoring meant respecting, that you can't create new traditions by stealing old ones. But Dad had already switched into conflict avoidance mode, the same way he'd been since Sarah moved in. Lily, why don't you take a walk to cool down? He suggested, in that tone that wasn't really a suggestion. We can talk about this later when everyone's calmer. As I headed for the door, I saw Sarah pull out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. I recognized her damage control mode, the same frantic texting she did whenever one of her book club stories didn't land quite right, or when someone questioned her parenting methods. She was already spinning this, turning it into another chapter for her book. When stepchildren struggle, navigating grief and boundaries. In the garage, I slumped against Dad's workbench, the familiar smell of sawdust and motor oil grounding me. I'd hidden here so many times over the years, it had become my unofficial sanctuary. The old lawn chair in the corner had a permanent indent from my body. Ben found me first. My little brother, all of 11 years old but already wise beyond his years, slipped through the door and closed it carefully behind him. Without a word, he held up his phone, showing me the Discord server. The screen was alive with messages, scrolling so fast I could barely read them. "It's happening," someone had typed. Finally, from another. She actually did it. The bowl was the last straw. Team Lily. Even little Tyler had managed to type "finally" in all caps. Marcus had posted a play-by-play of the confrontation, complete with timestamps. Madison had uploaded 3 photos, the clearest showing Sarah's face in that moment when her mask slipped, her features twisted with rage before she remembered the photographer was there. It would become known in our server as the face crack incident. Grace appeared minutes later, closing the garage door behind her with the same care Ben had used. We'd all learned to move quietly in that house, to not disturb Sarah's carefully maintained peace. She pulled out her phone and showed me a folder I'd never known existed. "I've been documenting everything for 3 years," she said quietly. "Look." The folder was labeled Evidence and contained hundreds of items. Screenshots of Sarah's Facebook posts next to photos showing what really happened. The Thanksgiving where she claimed we'd all cooked together, but Grace had time-stamped photos showing us kids in separate rooms, coming together only for the staged dining room shot. The spontaneous family game night that had actually required 3 hours of threats and bribes to arrange. Christmas morning, where our joyful faces looked more like prison photos. But it was the videos that really got me. Grace had secretly recorded dozens of moments when Sarah thought no cameras were on. Her snapping at Tyler for not smiling right. Her telling Madison to look more grateful during birthday presents. Her 40-minute lecture to all of us about maintaining appropriate faces during her book club meeting. At the bottom of the folder was a video from Sarah's birthday party. It showed all 6 kids' faces as she gushed about our perfect harmony, about how blessed she was, about how other families could learn from our example. We looked exhausted. We looked trapped. We looked like exactly what we were, 6 kids held hostage by an adult's delusion. Through the garage window, I watched Sarah gather Marcus, Madison, and Tyler in the living room. Her gestures grew animated as she spoke, occasionally pointing toward the garage. An emergency family meeting, but only for her real family. I saw her mouth the words temporary setback and handling it. That night, something shifted. The invisible lines we'd all maintained for years started to blur. At dinner, Sarah served everyone except me, claiming she'd miscalculated portions and hadn't made enough. It was such a petty, obvious move that even Dad looked uncomfortable. "She can have some of mine," he said, starting to push his plate toward me. "No," I said firmly, pushing it back. "I'm not hungry." Under the table, I felt something slide across my knee. Madison had slipped me a granola bar, her face never changing as Sarah launched into a speech about respect and boundaries and knowing one's place in the family unit. Marcus kicked my ankle gently, a show of support that shocked me more than anything else that had happened. These kids who'd spent 3 years avoiding me were suddenly, quietly, picking sides. Later that evening, Tyler knocked on my door. He stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, looking even younger than his 10 years. "I don't want the bowl," he said quietly. "I told my mum it was wrong to use your mum's stuff, but she said I didn't understand about symbolism and unity." It was the longest sentence I'd ever heard Tyler speak to me directly. Behind him, I could see Ben hovering in the hallway, standing guard in case Sarah appeared. "She was on the phone for a long time after dinner," Tyler continued, with someone named Dr. Thompson. She kept using words like documentation and patterns of behavior and therapeutic intervention. I think she's trying to get you in trouble. Over the next few days, Sarah's campaign against me intensified. She started a subtle but vicious social media war. First, she posted a family photo from the previous month where I'd been obviously cropped out. The caption read, "Protecting my babies from negative energy. Sometimes love means making hard choices. Blessed Mama Safe Spaces, Family First." Within an hour, she had 47 comments from her book club friends and PTA acquaintances asking if everything was all right, offering support, suggesting resources for troubled teens. She responded to each one with careful phrases about challenges and difficult transitions and putting the well-being of the majority first. The school counselor called me in the next day. Mrs. Patterson wore that careful expression adults use when they think you might be dangerous. "Lily," she said gently, "your stepmother called with some concerns. She mentioned there was an incident at home, that you've been showing signs of aggression." "Aggression?" I repeated, stunned. "She used the word unstable," Mrs. Patterson said carefully. "She's worried about the safety of the younger children. Now, I've known you for 3 years, and this doesn't sound like the Lily I know, but I need to ask, are you feeling angry? Have you had thoughts of hurting yourself or others?" I sat there, my mouth open, as the full scope of Sarah's strategy became clear. She wasn't just trying to punish me for the mixing bowl incident. She was building a case, creating a paper trail that painted me as disturbed, potentially dangerous. If she couldn't force me to play happy family, she'd remove me from the narrative entirely. That afternoon, Marcus cornered me by my locker. His usual cold distance had been replaced by something I'd never seen before, concern, maybe even guilt. "She's escalating," he said without preamble. "I heard her on the phone with some place in Utah, Desert Horizons or Desert Springs or something. It's one of those therapeutic boarding schools for troubled teens." He made air quotes around the words, his disgust evident. "She can't just send me away," I said, but even I heard the uncertainty in my voice. "She can if she convinces your dad you're a danger to others," Marcus said. "She's done this before. Not the boarding school thing, but the systematic character assassination. It's how she got my dad out of the picture, made everyone think he was the problem until he gave up fighting." He pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to me. "Discord server info for a group Madison found. Kids who survived therapeutic boarding schools. Read their stories. Then make sure you're never alone with Sarah. Always have witnesses. Document everything." He paused, then added quietly, "I'm sorry we didn't warn you sooner. We thought if we all just kept our heads down." "We thought we were protecting ourselves," Madison said, appearing beside us. I hadn't heard her approach, but all we did was let her perfect her tactics. First our dad, now you. We should have stood together from the beginning. That evening, I found Dad alone in his workshop, sanding a piece of wood with mechanical precision. It was what he did when he needed to think. I watched him for a moment, remembering how he used to let me help with projects when I was little, after Mum died. We'd build birdhouses and picture frames, not talking about grief, but working through it together. When had we stopped? "Dad," I said softly, "we need to talk." He looked up, and for a moment I saw exhaustion in his eyes that matched my own. "Is this about the bowl?" "It's about everything," I said. I pulled out my phone and showed him the Discord server. Not the messages. I wasn't ready to betray the other kids' trust like that, but just the fact that it existed. All 6 kids have been members for 3 years. We made it the week after Sarah moved in. His face went through several expressions before settling on something I couldn't read. "Why?" he asked finally. "Because we're not a family, Dad. We're 6 kids being forced to perform happiness for Sarah's ego. And now that I've broken character, she's trying to have me sent away." I told him about Mrs. Patterson, about the therapeutic boarding school Marcus had overheard, about the social media campaign. As I spoke, his face grew paler. When I finished, he set down his sandpaper and really looked at me for the first time in years. "Show me the posts," he said quietly. We spent the next hour going through Sarah's social media together. I showed him the cropped photos, the loaded captions, the comments from concerned friends. Then I showed him Grace's documentation folder. The contrast between Sarah's public narrative and our private reality was undeniable. "I didn't know," he said finally, his voice broken. I wanted to believe we were healing, that we'd found a way forward." "We were healing," I said. "Before Sarah, it was messy and hard, but it was real. Now we're just performing." That night at dinner, the tension was palpable. Sarah had made my favorite meal, a transparent attempt at manipulation. She served everyone with elaborate care, chatting about her day, asking about school. When she finally set a plate in front of me, she paused. "I hope we can move past our little disagreement," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've been thinking, and you're right. I should have asked before using your mother's bowl. Family is about respect, after all." It was a trap, and everyone knew it. Accepting her apology would mean admitting I'd overreacted. Rejecting it would make me look petty. I took a third option. "Thank you for acknowledging that," I said calmly. "I appreciate you understanding why that boundary is important to me." Her smile tightened. She'd wanted emotional drama to point to later, and I'd given her polite acceptance. Score 1 for the Discord server's coaching. After dinner, we had an emergency meeting in Marcus's car. All 6 kids crammed into his beat-up Honda, parked at the end of the street where Sarah couldn't see us from the house. It was the first time we'd all been together by choice, without adult supervision, in 3 years. "She's going to escalate," Madison said without preamble. "She does this. Push, push, push until someone snaps, then play victim." "We need to stop playing defense," Grace said. "We've spent 3 years avoiding each other, letting her divide us. What if we stopped?" "What do you mean?" Tyler asked in his small voice. "I mean, what if we actually became siblings?" Grace said. "Not the fake kind she wants for her book, but real ones. United front. No more letting her play us against each other." "She'll lose her mind," Marcus said, but he was smiling. "Her whole system depends on us being separate. She controls the interactions, stages the unity. If we start choosing each other..." "We break her narrative," I finished. The vote was unanimous. Operation Real Family was born. It started small. At breakfast the next morning, instead of our careful choreography of avoidance, Marcus sat next to me, just pulled out the chair and sat down like it was normal. Sarah's eyes darted between us, trying to figure out the angle. "Pass the orange juice?" he asked casually. I passed it. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us flinched. Across the table, Madison asked Grace about her history assignment. They'd never spoken at breakfast before, maintaining their careful territories. But now Madison was offering to help, mentioning she'd written a paper on the same topic last year. Tyler, taking his cue from his siblings, squeezed in between Ben and me instead of his usual spot safely between his bio-siblings. "Ben's going to show me his comic collection," he announced. Sarah's smile grew increasingly strained as she watched her carefully segregated children voluntarily integrate. "Well," she said brightly, "isn't this nice? Though Tyler, sweetie, your usual spot..." "I like it here," Tyler said firmly. It was the first time any of us had heard him contradict his mother. The walk to school was usually done in shifts. Sarah's kids first, then us, maintaining the illusion of family while never actually toggling. But that morning, Marcus waited by the door. "Thought we could walk together," he said when I appeared. "Safety in numbers and all that." Behind him, Madison nodded. "We've been stupid," she said simply. 3 years of letting her control us. I'm done. So we walked to school as a group. 6 kids who'd lived in the same house for 3 years, but were only now meeting each other. Grace and Madison discovered they both liked the same music. Marcus and I had been reading the same book series without knowing it. Ben showed Tyler his sketches, and Tyler offered to colour them. When Sarah's car pulled up at pickup time, she expected to collect her 3 kids as usual. Instead, all 6 of us approached together. Her face went through several expressions before settling on confused pleasure. "Are we giving everyone a ride today?" she asked carefully. "We're walking," Marcus said. "All of us, together." "But I'm here now," Sarah said, her voice taking on an edge. "We want to walk," Madison added. "It's nice out." Even Tyler nodded. "Ben's teaching me to skateboard." Sarah's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Other parents were watching, and she knew it. She couldn't make a scene without damaging her image. "If that's what you want," she said through gritted teeth. "Family dinner is at 6. Don't be late." As her car pulled away, Grace let out a breath. "That was the beginning," Marcus finished. "The walk home was different than the morning. We were still figuring each other out, but the ice was breaking. Madison told us about her dad, how Sarah had systematically isolated him until he gave up. Marcus admitted he'd been counting days until college since middle school. Tyler, in his quiet way, shared that he kept a calendar under his bed marking days until he turned 18. "That's 8 years," Ben said, horrified. "You can't wait 8 years." "What choice do I have?" Tyler asked, and the resignation in his 10-year-old voice made me want to burn Sarah's vision board. "We'll figure something out," I promised, "all of us, together." When we got home, Sarah was rearranging the family photos on the mantel. She'd moved all the pictures of our bio families to the edges, clustering the staged, blended photos in the center. It was a small thing, but we all recognized the message. Unity would be enforced. "I was thinking," she said without turning around, "that we should update our family portrait. The last one is from 2 years ago. We've all grown so much." She turned then, her smile sharp. "Lily, you especially have matured." The way she said matured made it sound like a disease. "That sounds fun," Grace said before I could respond. "Maybe we could do a casual one this time, instead of the formal poses." Sarah's eye twitched. She'd already been planning matching outfits, I could tell. "Formal portraits show unity," she said. "Coordination shows care. Or control," Madison said under her breath, but loud enough to be heard. The room went silent. Sarah turned slowly to face her daughter. "What was that, sweetie?" "Nothing," Madison said innocently, "just thinking out loud." Dinner that night was a new kind of performance. Instead of avoiding each other, we kids talked. Really talked. Marcus told a funny story from school that made Ben laugh milk out his nose. Grace and Madison compared notes on their English teacher. Tyler asked me about soccer, and I offered to teach him some moves. Sarah watched it all with growing alarm. This wasn't her orchestrated unity. This was organic, uncontrolled, and therefore dangerous. She tried several times to redirect the conversation, to reassert control, but we kept finding ways back to each other. "So," she said during a lull, "I scheduled Lily's next therapy appointment. Dr. Thompson had a cancellation this Thursday. Thursday's my game," I said calmly. "Playoffs. Therapy is more important than soccer," Sarah said sweetly, "especially given recent struggles." "I'll drive her to the game," Dad said suddenly. We all turned to look at him. He'd been quiet during dinner, watching our new dynamic with interest. "Therapy can be rescheduled. Playoffs can't." Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. "David, we discussed—" "No," Dad said firmly. "You discussed, you scheduled, you decided. I'm saying my daughter goes to her playoff game." The silence stretched taut. Sarah's face cycled through emotions before landing on hurt. "I'm just trying to help," she said, her voice small. "After the incident with the bowl, I thought—" "The incident," Grace said slowly, "where you tried to use our dead mother's belongings without asking." Sarah turned to Dad. "Do you see? They're ganging up on me. This is exactly what Dr. Thompson warned about. Troubled children forming trauma bonds." "We're not troubled," Marcus interrupted. "We're tired. There's a difference." "Tired of what, sweetheart?" Sarah asked, her voice dangerous. "Tired of having a roof over your head, food on the table, a mother who loves you?" "You're not my mother," I said quietly. "You're my father's wife. There's a difference." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah's mask slipped completely. 3 years, she hissed. 3 years I've tried with you people. I've given you everything. Structure, stability, opportunities. And this is how you repay me, by corrupting my children. We corrupted ourselves, Madison said dryly. Didn't need her help. Madison, Sarah snapped. Room now. Madison didn't move. No. Excuse me? I said no. Madison's voice was steady. I'm 15. I'm eating dinner with my family, all of them. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Fine, you want to side with them? You can all enjoy each other's company. I need some air. She stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. In the silence that followed, Tyler's small voice piped up. Does this mean we can have dessert without the gratitude circle? The laughter that erupted was the first genuine sound our dining room had heard in years. Dad stayed at the table after Sarah left. For the first time in 3 years, he really looked at all of us. Not as Sarah's blended family project, but as 6 individual kids who'd been forced into an impossible situation. The gratitude circle, he asked finally. Ben explained how Sarah made us go around the table every night sharing what we were grateful for, but it had to be about family unity. Generic gratitude didn't count. We had to specifically mention how blessed we were to have each other, how wonderful our blended family was, how lucky we were to have Sarah's guidance. Last week I said I was grateful for pizza, Tyler admitted. She made me redo it 3 times until I said I was grateful for the family pizza night that brought us together. Dad's face did something complicated. How long has this been going on? Since the beginning, Grace said gently. You wanted so badly for us to be okay that you didn't see. We spent the next hour telling him things. Small things, big things, the accumulation of 3 years of forced performance. The Discord server got explained in detail. Marcus pulled it up on his phone, showing Dad the channels, the thousands of messages documenting our misery. Exit strategies, Dad read aloud, his voice hollow. You've all been planning to leave. What choice did we have? Marcus asked. My mum doesn't see us as people. She sees us as characters in her story. And if we don't play our parts right... She rewrites us as villains, I finished. We told him about the book, how his grief and our loss were being packaged as inspiration porn for Sarah's ego, how she'd already started shopping it to publishers, using our pain as a selling point. The advance she'd gotten had paid for the kitchen renovation, which explained why she was so desperate to deliver a finished manuscript. Dad left the table abruptly, returning with a manila folder. Your grandmother sent these, he said, spreading papers across the table. She was worried after Sarah called her, so she did some research. The papers were printouts from online forums, blog posts and social media groups, all from people who'd survived toxic step-family situations. The patterns were eerily familiar. The forced bonding, the performing happiness, the gradual erasure of the original family, the rewriting of history to suit the new narrative. There's a term for it, Dad said, pointing to one article, hostile takeover parenting, when a step-parent tries to erase and replace rather than blend and respect. We sat in stunned silence. It had a name. What we'd been living through had a name. Sarah returned 2 hours later, composed but cold. She found us still at the table, the papers spread between us. Her eyes took in the scene, the evidence, our united front, and Dad's grim expression. I see you've been busy, she said carefully. Sit down, Sarah, Dad said. It wasn't a request. What followed was the most honest conversation our family had ever had. Dad laid out what he'd learned, what we'd shared, what needed to change. Sarah tried to interrupt several times, to explain, to reframe, to deny. But the evidence was overwhelming. I was trying to create something beautiful, she said finally, tears streaming down her face. My first marriage failed because Brian wouldn't commit to the vision. He kept insisting the kids needed space, needed time, needed to process. But I knew better. I knew that with enough structure, enough planning, enough love, I could create the perfect family. Whose perfect family? Grace asked quietly. Because it wasn't ours. Sarah's face crumpled. For the first time in 3 years, she looked genuinely vulnerable. Mine, she whispered. It was supposed to be mine. The admission broke something in the room. Madison reached for her mother's hand, then pulled back, the gesture incomplete. Even now, even seeing her mother's pain, she couldn't bridge the gap Sarah had created with her rigid control. I need the book to work, Sarah continued desperately. I've already spent the advance. I've told everyone. My entire platform is built on our success. If I fail again— You've already failed, Marcus said, not unkindly. You failed the moment you prioritized the story over the people living it. Sarah turned to her children, searching their faces for something, forgiveness maybe, or understanding. But all she found was exhaustion. 3 kids who'd spent years contorting themselves to fit her vision, who'd lost their father to her narrative, who'd been willing to lose themselves too if it meant keeping their mother's love. We can't do this anymore, Madison said simply. Any of us. The meeting ended with decisions. Sarah would return the advance or find a different story to tell. The color-coded calendars would come down. The forced family activities would stop. We would find our own way to be a family or not, without scripts and schedules and mandatory gratitude circles. Sarah agreed because she had no choice. The alternative was losing everyone, including her bio kids who were finally done enabling her fantasy. That night, for the first time in 3 years, the house felt quiet in a good way. Not the tense silence of people avoiding each other, but the peaceful quiet of people who didn't need to perform. I found Tyler and Ben in the living room working on a puzzle together without supervision. Grace and Madison were in Grace's room, doors open, music playing. Marcus was in the kitchen, making popcorn for anyone who wanted it. Movie? He asked when he saw me. Your pick. We ended up with all 6 kids in the living room, sprawled on furniture and floor, watching some ridiculous comedy Ben chose. Sarah stayed in her room, and Dad joined us halfway through, settling into his recliner with a bemused expression. Is this what normal looks like? Tyler asked during a quiet moment. I don't know, I admitted, but it's real. The next few weeks were awkward. Sarah struggled without her systems, often defaulting to control before catching herself. We kids had to learn how to exist in the same space without the careful choreography we'd maintained for years. There were conflicts, real ones now, not the passive-aggressive warfare we'd perfected, but real conflicts could be resolved with real conversations. The book died quietly. Sarah told her publisher she was taking the project in a different direction, needing more time to develop the material. They wanted their advance back, which led to hushed arguments about money that all 6 kids pretended not to hear. Her social media transformed. Gone were the perfect family posts. In their place, she shared quotes about growth and change, about letting go of expectations. Her book club friends noticed the shift. Some reached out with concern, others with relief. Apparently, more than one had seen through the perfect facade but hadn't known how to address it. The breakthrough came, ironically, during a family photo. Dad's company was updating their website and wanted employee family photos. Sarah immediately went into planning mode before catching herself. How do you kids want to do this? She asked awkwardly. We looked at each other, communicating in the silent language we'd developed. Just normal, Grace suggested. Whatever happens. So we trooped outside with Dad's phone, no matching outfits, no assigned positions. Dad set the timer and ran to join us. In the scramble, people ended up wherever, bio kids mixed with step kids. Sarah slightly off-center instead of controlling the middle. When we looked at the photo later, we were all slightly blurry because Tyler had made Ben laugh right as it snapped. Hair was messy, positioning was chaos, at least 2 people were mid-blink. It was perfect. This one, Dad said firmly, this is us. Sarah stared at the photo for a long time. We look, she started, then stopped. Happy, Madison suggested. Actually happy? Her mother nodded slowly. I didn't know the difference, she admitted. I thought if it looked right, it was right. The mixing bowl returned to its place in the cabinet, used but respected. Sometimes Sarah would reach for it, then choose something else, a small gesture that meant everything. Tyler helped me make cookies in it one afternoon, chocolate chip from Mum's recipe. We brought one to Sarah without ceremony or forced gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply and meant it. Change wasn't instant or easy. Sarah had spent years building her rigid structures, and we'd spent years learning to navigate them. Unlearning took time. There were setbacks, moments when she'd slip into director mode or we'd retreat into our careful distances. But there were also breakthroughs. The day Madison voluntarily sat next to her mother at dinner. The afternoon Ben asked Tyler to teach him skateboarding. The evening Grace helped Madison with a panic attack using techniques she'd learned after Mom died. Small moments of genuine connection that meant more than 3 years of forced togetherness. Marcus decided not to go to the furthest college possible. "I want to see how this plays out," he told me. "Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on the little ones. Make sure Mum doesn't backslide." We kept the Discord server but renamed it. Surviving together became figuring it out. The emergency protocols and escape strategies were replaced with homework help and meme sharing. It became what it should have been all along, a place for siblings to connect. Sarah found a therapist who specialized in blended family dynamics, a real one, not Dr. Thompson, who turned out to be a life coach she'd found online. The therapist's first recommendation was to stop trying to blend and start trying to respect. Revolutionary concept, apparently. "I wanted to erase the lines," Sarah admitted during one session. "Make us all one unit. But the lines are important. They're your histories, your connections, your identities. My job isn't to erase them, but to honor them." Dad started dating Mum again, in a way. Not literally, but he began sharing stories about her with all 6 kids. Sarah had tried to minimize mentions of Mum, thinking it would help us move forward. But moving forward didn't mean forgetting. Tyler and Madison learned about the woman whose kitchen they shared, whose husband they'd inherited. It made the connections richer, not more painful. The perfect blended family Sarah had tried to force never materialized. Instead, something messier but more authentic grew. We weren't the Brady Bunch, weren't a heartwarming example for others to follow. We were 6 kids who'd been thrown together by adult choices, who'd found connection in unexpected places, who'd learned that real family isn't about matching outfits and synchronized schedules, but about choosing to show up for each other. Some days we ate dinner as 8, sometimes as 4 or 5. Some activities we did together, others apart. The difference was choice. We chose our connections instead of having them assigned. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. The last entry in the original Discord server was from Tyler, our youngest member. "We survived," he wrote simply. Marcus responded, "No, we lived. The distinction mattered." We'd stopped surviving Sarah's vision and started living our own reality. Messy, complicated, sometimes painful, but real. A family not by force but by choice, built on the wreckage of someone else's fantasy but stronger for having weathered the storm together. Sarah never wrote her book about creating the perfect blended family, but maybe if she ever decides to write again, she could write about something more valuable, the courage to let go of perfection and embrace the beautiful mess of reality. The kids who taught her that lesson would probably even help, as long as she asked first. After all, that's what real families do. The months that followed our confrontation were like learning to breathe again after being underwater for too long. You know that feeling when you've been holding your breath without realizing it, and suddenly you gasp and air fills your lungs. That's what our house felt like, all 8 of us remembering what oxygen tasted like. Sarah's transformation wasn't magical or instant. She didn't wake up one day as a different person. Instead, it was like watching someone slowly emerge from a fog they'd created themselves. Some mornings, I'd catch her standing in the kitchen with her laminating machine in her hands, fingers tracing the edges like an addict with their last cigarette. The color-coded calendars came down, but the wall showed their ghostly outlines for months, rectangles of brighter paint where they'd blocked the sun. Madison told me later that her mother had cried for 3 days straight after that family meeting. Not the performative tears she used to manipulate situations, but deep, body-shaking sobs that came from realizing she'd spent 3 years choreographing a dance that everyone else had been desperate to stop. She'd built her entire identity around being the perfect blended family mother, and without that narrative, she didn't know who she was. The first real test came 3 weeks after our confrontation. Tyler's 11th birthday was approaching, and historically, Sarah would have planned an elaborate party with coordinated decorations, assigned roles for each family member, and a cake that looked better than it tasted. This year, she sat Tyler down and asked him something revolutionary. "What do you want?" Tyler, sweet, quiet. Tyler, who'd spent 4 years going along with whatever his mother decided, looked shocked. "I get to choose?" "You get to choose," Sarah confirmed, though I could see her hands clenching and unclenching under the table, fighting the urge to take control. What Tyler wanted was simple: pizza with just the family, a homemade cake that he could help make, even if it turned out lopsided. No theme, no matching anything, no scheduled activities. Just people he'd come to care about, hanging out because they wanted to, not because someone put it on a color-coded calendar. The party planning became a group effort, which was its own kind of chaos. Grace and Madison took charge of decorations, which ended up being a hilarious mix of dinosaurs, Tyler's choice, and whatever random party supplies they found in the closet from previous events. Marcus and I attempted to make a cake from scratch, which resulted in something that looked like it had survived an earthquake but tasted like heaven. Ben drew a custom birthday card with Tyler as a superhero, and even Dad contributed by teaching Tyler some basic woodworking skills as an early present. Sarah's job was to do nothing, to not plan, not orchestrate, not document. It might have been the hardest thing we'd ever asked of her. I caught her taking photos once, and she immediately put her phone down, apologizing. "Old habits," she said with a shaky laugh. The party itself was beautiful in its imperfection. The pizza arrived late because nobody had thought to order it until we were already hungry. The cake's frosting melted on one side because we decorated it while it was still warm. Madison got Tyler a gift that was clearly re-gifted from something she'd received and never used, and instead of being offended, he laughed so hard he snorted soda. At one point, I looked around the table and realized we were all genuinely laughing. Not the forced laughter of Sarah's stage dinners, but real, ugly, snorting laughter, because Ben had just told the worst joke in human history, and Tyler's reaction was funnier than the joke itself. Sarah was laughing too, mascara running, looking more human than I'd ever seen her. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I found her sitting in the kitchen staring at the demolished remains of the cake. "We forgot to sing happy birthday," she said when she noticed me. "No, we didn't," I said, confused. "We sang it twice because Tyler wanted an encore. But I didn't get a video of it," she said, and I realized she was crying again. "I always get a video, for the memories." I sat down across from her, this woman who'd made our lives miserable for 3 years, and felt something I hadn't expected: compassion. "The memory is better than a video," I said. "Videos show what happened. Memories hold how it felt." She looked at me for a long moment. "When did you become wise?" "Surviving you required developing new skills," I said, and for the first time, we both laughed about it. The healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks and struggles, moments where old patterns reasserted themselves like muscle memory. Sarah would slip into director mode during stressful times. We kids would retreat into our separate corners when conflicts arose. Dad would choose avoidance over confrontation. But the difference now was awareness. We caught ourselves, called each other out gently, course-corrected. One evening, about 2 months after our family reckoning, I came home to find Marcus teaching Tyler guitar in the living room. It was such a normal scene that it took me a moment to realize why it felt extraordinary. For 3 years, they'd barely spoken despite living in the same house. Now Tyler was massacring Smoke on the Water, while Marcus patiently corrected his finger placement, both of them grinning. He wanted to learn, Marcus explained when he saw me watching, and I figured, why not? Why not indeed? Those two words became something of a family motto. Why not try being actual siblings? Why not have dinner conversations that weren't scripted? Why not choose to care about each other instead of being forced to pretend? Madison and Grace's friendship evolved into something beautiful. They discovered they'd both been using the same coping mechanisms, just in different ways. Where Grace had hidden in her music, Madison had escaped through dance. They started attending each other's performances, not because Sarah scheduled it, but because they wanted to support each other. The first time Madison voluntarily hugged Grace after a concert, both of them cried. The financial fallout from the failed book deal was significant. Sarah had to take on extra work to pay back the advance, which meant she had less time to micromanage our lives, even if she'd wanted to. She started a blog about letting go of perfectionism, and while it didn't have the viral potential of her perfect family narrative, it resonated with parents who were exhausted from trying to force happiness. I was so afraid of failing again, she admitted one evening when it was just her, Dad, and me in the kitchen. My first marriage ended because I couldn't control the outcome. I thought if I could just control everything this time, plan every moment, schedule every interaction, I could guarantee success. But families aren't businesses, Dad said gently. You can't project manage love. I know that now, Sarah said. I just wish I'd learned it without causing so much damage. The damage was real, and we didn't pretend otherwise. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. There were conversations that lasted late into the night, tears shed over lost years, anger expressed that had been suppressed too long. Tyler, our youngest, struggled with learning to express preferences after years of being told what he should want. Ben had to unlearn the hypervigilance that came from constantly navigating Sarah's moods. Grace dealt with anxiety attacks triggered by any situation that felt too controlled or staged. But we were dealing with it together, and that made all the difference. The holidays that year were approached with trepidation. Sarah's previous productions had been exhausting marathons of forced cheer. Matching pajamas for Christmas morning photos, assigned seats that photographed well but separated natural alliances, scripted gratitude sessions that sucked the joy out of genuine thankfulness. This time, we decided to try something radical. Nothing. No plans, no schedules, no forced traditions. We'd wake up on Christmas morning and see what happened. But what if nothing happens? Sarah asked, genuine panic in her voice. Then we'll have successfully done nothing together, Marcus said. That's still something. Christmas morning arrived with its usual chaos, but a different kind. Tyler woke everyone up at an ungodly hour, but instead of being shuttled into assigned positions for photos, we stumbled blearily into the living room in whatever we'd slept in. Dad made coffee. Grace started cinnamon rolls. The rest of us sprawled wherever, opening presents in no particular order. Sarah sat on the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching it all unfold. I could see her fighting every instinct to organize, to direct, to document. When Tyler opened a present and wrapping paper flew everywhere, she twitched but didn't move to clean it. When Ben and Madison started a wrapping paper ball fight, she opened her mouth to stop them, then closed it. This is chaos, she whispered. Beautiful chaos, Dad corrected, dodging a paper ball. And it was. We ate cinnamon rolls on the couch, getting icing on the cushions. We played with gifts immediately instead of waiting for everyone to finish opening theirs. We took exactly 3 photos the entire day, and they were all blurry because we were laughing too hard to hold the phone steady. Late in the afternoon, I found Sarah in her room, looking at old photos on her laptop. Not posting them, just looking. The contrast between the staged perfection of previous years and the genuine mess of today was stark. Do you miss it? I asked, sitting beside her. I miss feeling like I knew what I was doing, she admitted. Those photos, those schedules, they made me feel like I was succeeding, like I could measure our happiness in matching outfits and coordinated smiles. But were you happy? I asked. She was quiet for a long moment. No, I was terrified every moment that it would fall apart, that someone would break character and reveal what a fraud I was. You weren't a fraud, I said, surprising myself. You were just lost. We all were. She turned to me then, this woman who'd tried to erase my mother's memory, who'd nearly sent me away for refusing to play along with her fantasy. I'm sorry, she said simply, for all of it. I know, I said, and I did. Forgiveness came in layers, like peeling an onion. Each conversation revealed new depths of hurt, but also new possibilities for healing. Marcus forgave his mother for driving his father away, but asked her to reach out to him, to admit her role in the divorce. Madison forgave the years of rigid control, but set firm boundaries about her autonomy going forward. Tyler, in his gentle way, forgave everything but asked for promises about the future. School noticed the changes in all of us. Teachers commented on how much more relaxed we seemed. Friends mentioned that we actually talked about our siblings now instead of carefully avoiding the topic. The counsellor, Mrs. Patterson, called me in for a follow-up meeting. I have to admit, she said, when your stepmother called with concerns, I was worried. But seeing you now, seeing all of you, something significant has shifted. I told her about our family's journey, about choosing authenticity over performance. She listened with growing amazement. You know, she said finally, you should consider writing about this experience. Not for publication necessarily, but for processing. Your perspective is valuable. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah had tried to monetize our misery with her perfect family book. Now I was being encouraged to write our actual story, mess and all. Spring arrived with new challenges. Blended families, even functional ones, have complexities that nuclear families don't face. Custody schedules with Madison's dad, who was tentatively re-entering her life. Decisions about holidays and birthdays that involved multiple sets of grandparents. The ongoing navigation of yours, mine, and ours. But we were navigating it together, and that made all the difference. One day, Mia asked if I wanted to go prom dress shopping with her and Grace. It was such a normal sister thing that I almost cried. We spent the day trying on ridiculous dresses, eating pretzel bites, and gossiping about boys. Sarah dropped us off but didn't come in, respecting that this was our moment. Your mum's gotten better, I told Madison as we watched Sarah drive away. She's trying, Madison agreed. It's weird seeing her uncertain about things. She used to have an answer for everything, a plan for every situation. Now she asks questions and actually listens to the answers. The prom itself became another test. Previous years, Sarah would have orchestrated every moment, from pre-prom photos to after-party plans. This year, she asked what we wanted, accepted our answers, and only took photos when we asked her to. The pictures from that night showed genuine smiles, mismatched poses, and real joy. Summer brought the anniversary of Mum's death. In previous years, Sarah had tried to minimize the day, scheduling activities to keep us busy and distracted. This year, she asked Dad what we needed. Space to grieve, he said simply, so she gave us that. She took her kids to visit their grandmother for the day, leaving Dad, Grace, Ben, and me to navigate our grief privately. We visited Mum's grave, told stories, cried, laughed, and remembered without performance or interruption. When Sarah and her kids returned that evening, they brought dinner and quiet support, joining our family without trying to reshape it. Thank you, I told Sarah later. For what? She asked. For letting us miss her. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She was part of your story before I was. I should have honored that from the beginning. The summer also brought unexpected joy. All 6 kids decided to take a road trip together. Just us, no parents. It was Marcus's idea, a last adventure before he started college. Sarah's initial response was to plan every detail, but she caught herself. Just be safe, she said instead, and maybe text occasionally so we know you're alive. That trip was everything. 6 kids who'd spent 3 years avoiding each other crammed into Marcus's Honda, driving to the beach with no real plan beyond getting there. We got lost, ran out of gas, ate terrible fast food, slept in the car when we couldn't find a motel, and had the time of our lives. You know what's weird? Tyler said one night as we sat on the beach, watching the sunset. I can't imagine doing this trip without all of you. Even me, I asked, remembering his message about hating us for existing. Especially you, he said. You're the one who broke the spell. If you hadn't stood up about that bowl, we'd probably still be performing happiness while dying inside. We all broke it, I corrected, together. Madison pulled out her phone and took a picture of us sitting there, sandy and sunburned and genuinely happy. For actual memories, she said. Not for show. The trip home was quieter, all of us knowing that things were about to change. Marcus would leave for college soon. Grace was looking at schools for next year. The family we'd fought so hard to become would shift and evolve. Promise we'll stay in touch, Tyler said as we pulled into our driveway. Like, for real, not just social media performance. We survived Sarah's forced family, Marcus said. We can definitely survive choosing to stay connected. His leaving for college hit everyone harder than expected. Even Sarah struggled, though for different reasons than before. She wasn't losing a prop in her performance, but saying goodbye to a son she was just beginning to know as a person, rather than a character. I wasted so much time, she said the night before he left. 3 years of schedules and photos and forced interactions when I could have been actually knowing you. We have time now, Marcus told her, and I'll be back for breaks. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't backslide into color-coding Tyler's life. The house felt different with Marcus gone, but not empty. We'd learned to fill spaces with genuine connection rather than staged interaction. Tyler moved into Marcus's room after asking permission from all of us, a small gesture that showed how far we'd come. He kept Marcus's guitar out, practicing the songs his brother had taught him. Fall brought new routines and new challenges. Sarah started individual therapy in addition to our family sessions, working through her need for control and fear of failure. She shared bits and pieces with us, appropriate to our ages and relationships, but the work was clearly profound. I realized I was trying to produce a family like it was a show, she told us one evening, with me as director, producer, and critic. But families aren't productions, they're messy ecosystems that find their own balance. Did your therapist tell you that? Madison asked. No, Sarah admitted. I read it in one of those parent blogs I used to mock for being too permissive. Turns out there's wisdom in letting things unfold naturally. The blog she'd started about releasing perfectionism grew slowly but steadily. Parents reached out with their own stories of forced family dynamics, of trying too hard, of the exhaustion that comes from performing happiness. Sarah's responses showed a humility and wisdom born from hard experience. One reader asked how to know if you're pushing too hard for family unity. Sarah's response became her most shared post. If you have to force it, it's not unity, it's control. Real connection comes from choice, not coercion. Create space for relationships to grow naturally, even if that means they grow differently than you imagined. Thanksgiving approached with its own challenges. Previous years had been performances worthy of magazine spreads. This year, we decided to try something different. Potluck style, where everyone contributed what they wanted, not what photographed best. The result was eclectic, to say the least. Dad made turkey. Sarah attempted her grandmother's stuffing. Grace brought rolls from a bakery because baking wasn't her thing. Madison made a salad that was mostly croutons. Marcus drove home from college with a pie he'd bought at a gas station. Tyler and Ben collaborated on mashed potatoes that had interesting lumps. I made Mum's green bean casserole, using her recipe and, yes, her mixing bowl. The table looked like a disaster. Nothing matched. Portions were weird. The gas station pie was objectively terrible. And it was perfect. This is what we're actually grateful for, Dad said, gesturing at the chaos. Not perfection, but presence. Not performance, but participation. We went around the table sharing gratitude, but naturally this time. Tyler was grateful Marcus came home. Madison was grateful for boundaries. Grace was grateful for music and sisters who understood. Ben was grateful we'd kept the leftovers from the failed cake attempts because they made great snacks. Marcus was grateful for the Discord server, which had evolved from survival tool to sibling group chat. I was grateful for the courage to speak truth, even when it shattered comfortable lies. Sarah went last. I'm grateful for second chances, she said simply, and for 6 kids who taught me that love isn't something you can schedule. Winter came with its own rhythms. The house had found a natural flow without forced structure. Homework happened at the kitchen table with whoever needed help. Dinners were sometimes all 8 of us, sometimes just a few, depending on schedules and preferences. Movie nights occurred organically when enough people gathered in the living room. Chores got done through negotiation rather than assignment. It's so much easier, Sarah marveled one evening, watching Tyler help me with dishes while Ben and Grace argued good-naturedly over TV channels. When I stop trying to control everything, it actually works better. Almost like teenagers are capable of basic functioning without micromanagement, Madison said dryly. Almost, Sarah agreed, able now to laugh at herself. The anniversary of the mixing bowl incident arrived without fanfare. I realized the date only because Facebook showed me a memory. Sarah's post about choosing family harmony over material possessions, with its carefully worded implications about my instability. The post was gone now, deleted along with hundreds of others that portrayed our false perfection. I found Sarah in the kitchen that evening, making cookies with Tyler using her own mixing bowl. When she saw me, she paused. I owe you an apology, she said. A real one. Not for trying to use the bowl that day, but for everything that led to that moment. For trying to erase your mother's memory. For building my identity on a lie and forcing you all to maintain it. For nearly sending you away rather than admitting I was wrong. I know, I said, and I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to that anger was exhausting. When did you become so wise? She asked, echoing our conversation from months ago. Surviving you required developing new skills, I repeated, and this time we both really laughed. Marcus came home for winter break with stories of college and a girlfriend he wanted us to meet. Sarah's immediate instinct was to plan an elaborate dinner, but she caught herself. Or we could just order pizza and be normal, she said. Normal is good, Marcus agreed. The girlfriend, Jenna, was lovely and completely confused by our family dynamics. So you're all siblings but not? She asked over pizza. We're siblings by choice, Tyler explained, which is actually better because we picked each other. Watching Sarah interact with Jenna was fascinating. The old Sarah would have overwhelmed her with questions and tried to force instant intimacy. This Sarah offered warm welcome and space, letting relationships develop naturally. Your mum's pretty cool, Jenna told Marcus later, not knowing what a journey that coolness had required. New Year's Eve became our first real test of creating new traditions. Sarah suggested everyone write down one thing they wanted to leave in the old year and one hope for the new year. It could have been cheesy, but the sincerity made it profound. Tyler wanted to leave behind fear of speaking up. Madison wanted to leave perfectionism. Grace chose anxiety about the future. Ben picked the need to make everyone happy. Marcus wrote down distance as defense mechanism. I chose resentment. Sarah's was simple, control. Our hopes were equally telling. Connection, authenticity, trust, joy, freedom, balance, peace. Words that would have been impossible in our color-coded past. As midnight approached, we stood in the backyard with sparklers, writing our words in light before they faded. No photos, no documentation, just 8 people choosing to mark time together. You know what's funny? Madison said as we watched the neighbors' fireworks. We actually look like those perfect family photos now, but real. She was right. Huddled together against the cold, laughing at Dad's terrible jokes, teasing each other with genuine affection, we looked like exactly what Sarah had tried so hard to manufacture. The difference was that nobody was manufacturing anything. We'd found our way to each other through conflict and confrontation, through breaking down false narratives and building authentic connections. Sarah noticed too. "All those years of forcing it," she said softly, "when all I had to do was get out of the way." "Hey," Marcus said, surprising everyone, "that took courage too. Changing, admitting you were wrong and actually doing something about it. That's pretty badass, Mom." It was the first time any of us had acknowledged Sarah's transformation as an act of bravery rather than just necessary correction. She started crying, the kind of tears that come from unexpected grace. The year turned, and with it came new challenges and growth. Grace got into her dream college with a scholarship. Madison's relationship with her father deepened as he re-entered her life. Tyler discovered a love of theatre that nobody had seen coming. Ben's art evolved from dark sketches to vibrant paintings. Marcus changed his major twice, finding his path through trial and error rather than rigid planning. And Sarah, she found herself not the curated version she'd presented to the world, but the messy, uncertain, trying her best human underneath. Her blog evolved into a book proposal, but this one was different. No false narratives or manufactured harmony, just the raw truth of a woman who'd nearly destroyed her family trying to perfect it, and the kids who'd saved them all by refusing to play along. "Would you be okay with me writing about us?" she asked one evening, the proposal spread on the kitchen table. The real story this time. We all exchanged looks, that silent communication we'd perfected. "As long as you tell the whole truth," I said finally, "even the ugly parts, especially the ugly parts." "Those are the most important parts," she agreed. The book, when it eventually published, was nothing like her original vision. No tips for achieving perfect blended family harmony, no color-coding systems or forced bonding activities. Instead, it was a cautionary tale about the danger of prioritizing perception over reality, and a hopeful story about the possibility of redemption when you finally stop performing and start living. She dedicated it to us. To the 6 children who taught me that love can't be scheduled, families can't be forced, and the most beautiful moments are the ones you don't plan. But before any of that, before the book and the interviews and the parents who reached out saying her story had changed their approach, there was just us. A messy, complicated, chosen family sitting around a kitchen table that had seen too much performance and was finally hosting real life. "You know what we should do?" Tyler suggested one evening, apropos of nothing. "Family photos, but like real ones." So we did. No matching outfits, no assigned positions, no forced smiles. Just 8 people who'd learned that family isn't about blood or law or carefully staged moments. It's about showing up, speaking truth, and choosing each other even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The photos from that day hang on our wall now, mixed in with all the others. You can see the evolution if you look closely, from rigid poses to authentic chaos, from performed harmony to genuine connection, from surviving to living. And in every recent photo, there's something the staged ones never captured. The mixing bowl, sometimes in the background, sometimes held by whoever's baking. A quiet reminder that respecting the past and embracing the present aren't mutually exclusive. That families, like recipes, can be adapted without losing their essence. That love, unlike schedules, can't be laminated and posted on the fridge. We still have our struggles, blended families always will, but we face them honestly now, without scripts or schedules or mandatory unity. We choose each other daily, which is harder than assignment, but infinitely more meaningful. Sarah still occasionally pulls out her label maker, and we still tease her for it. The difference is that now she laughs too. "Remember when you tried to send me to therapeutic boarding school?" I asked her recently, able finally to find humor in the darkness. "Remember when you destroyed my entire worldview with a mixing bowl?" she countered. "Best thing that ever happened to us," we said in unison, and meant it. Because it was. That moment of truth, painful as it was, shattered the false foundation we'd built our family on and forced us to rebuild on solid ground. It taught us that authentic mess is better than performed perfection, that chosen connection beats forced bonding, and that the best families aren't the ones that look perfect in photos, but the ones that feel real in daily life. The Discord server still exists, though it's evolved far from its origins. Surviving Sarah became Thriving Together, and the channels reflect our growth. Emergency protocols became homework help. Exit strategies transformed into college planning support. The venting channel still exists but sees less traffic, replaced by shared memes and genuine check-ins. And Sarah? She's in the server now too, added by unanimous vote on the anniversary of our family reckoning. Her first message was simple. "Thank you for surviving me long enough to teach me how to live." Marcus replied for all of us. "Thank you for becoming someone worth choosing as family." Because that's what we are now. Not steps or halves or bonuses or any of the other terms people use to qualify family. Just family. Complicated, messy, chosen family. Built not on someone else's vision, but on our collective decision to show up for each other, honestly and imperfectly. It's not the story Sarah set out to tell. It's better. It's true. And truth, we learned, is the only foundation strong enough to build a real family on. Even if it starts with something as simple as a girl refusing to let go of her mother's mixing bowl, standing in a kitchen full of strangers pretending to be siblings, and speaking the words that would save them all. That's not yours. Sometimes the most profound transformations begin with the smallest acts of truth. Ours began with those 3 words and grew into something none of us could have imagined. A family that chose itself, scars and all. After all, that's what real families do.